A lot better. That's better then. Right. Okay. So where was we?
Right.
So remote viewing,
yes,
Tony.
Remote viewing. Yeah. Well, remote viewing is the subconscious. Some would argue it's a psychic technique, but it's actually to do with the subconscious mind reaching out to a distant location, accessing information, and basically drawing it at a distance. So it's like the ability to remotely see something without actually being there. And there's all kinds of techniques, but the main one is something called coordinate remote viewing. There's scientific remote viewing, and there's the one the Russians did, which is like an out of body technique, which is psychic. But mainly, the one that the Americans developed was in response to the Russians, and that was called Project Scanet, Scan by Coordinates, and it's all about the subconscious mind decoding data from a distant location and actually drawing it. For example, we went to an air training squadron the other night, and I gave them a target to look at. They didn't know what the target was. They had to draw it using specific techniques. And it was a North Korean rocket launching site. And one of them, out of a group of 20, drew the thing. Drew the rocket, drew the symbols on the rocket. I thought it was superb. And so it works. And it was started by Stanford Research Institute, and the technique's known as remote viewing, or CRV, coordinate remote viewing, which is something I'm very au fait with. There's also scientific remote viewing, which is handy for doing paranormal stuff with, and remote viewing aliens and UFOs and things.
Right. Okay. So for the paranormal minded, how would they do that?
Well, basically, what they would basically do. How can I put it? In a word, the Stanford, it's all about signal from noise. So it's all about the key teaching of it is to separate the signal from the noise. So a psychic, for example, they discovered had a very noisy mind, and a lot of stuff was coming in the way of kind of like getting into the signal. So, for example, if they were tasked to go to a remote view a target, if they were extremely psychic, they'd have all sorts of data coming in that was completely irrelevant. But if people were good drawers and artists and stuff like that, they were quite gifted at it. So what it's called is the bit between the mind and the target is called the signal line. And what they did is they adapted techniques so that the signal line could be enhanced. In other words, the invisible link between the target location and the subconscious mind could be enhanced, amplified, and the conscious mind could be bypassed using something called an ideogram technique. They put millions into doing this, and they developed a specific template that would draw an ideogram, a symbol that would be like the subconscious link between the target and the site location. Sorry, I beg your pardon, between the remote viewer and the site location. And so, but the Russians developed all kinds of techniques to try. It was psychic warfare, and so a lot of these projects, they came into projects like Stargate, Grill Flame, Gondola Wish, which is something that's very secret. We don't quite know what Gondola Wish is all about, but there was all kinds of things. And then there was the Russian KGB, who also developed remote viewing. But what is hilarious about them is they developed something called, well, it wasn't what they did, data channeling they called it. And the Politburo thought they'd gone crazy because these hardened KGB men set up their own remote viewing unit and started channeling aliens. And they weren't just doing it ad hoc either. They had precision mechanisms in place to filter the data of what they were looking at. So and they pumped millions into it. And so that was called Troop 1003. And they were a special remote viewing unit of the KGB, to which Joseph McMoneagle, who was one of the top remote viewers in the US Army, was fully aware of and kind of like pointed me in the right direction of. What is fascinating about the KGB guys is they formed, out of remote viewing, a whole new understanding of cosmology called New Cosmology. And it's odd because there's no publisher wants to touch their work with a barge pole, and it's absolutely outstanding. And I'd recommend the website to the guys in the studio and the guys and girls there and the listeners. It's called newcosmology.com, N-O-O with the word cosmology.com. Absolutely incredible stuff. And they go through how man is a signal processor, and that's what the U.S. Air Force concluded: signal processor.
Yeah, this Joseph, he he remote viewed quite a lot of things, though, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He remote viewed a submarine base in Russia that they were having difficulty getting data on. It probably went far deeper than what's in the public domain, and it will have done, because there's a lot going on that goes far deeper than just simply remote viewing. I think the film Inception rings very closely to the mark of finding answers as to what is going on in the world of the paranormal and aliens and UFOs and parallel universes. There does appear to be some type of non-locality function going on where when we dream at night, for example, and this is a fine example, it seems that all non-locality, all time as we know it, has broken down, and all kinds of inception is going on within that environment. And that leaves all kinds of things to happen, including parallel universes, and parallel people like yourself. You could be talking now in another universe, and you might look roughly. But that's what they kind of came across when they were doing all this, and a lot of it went classified, and a lot of it went public. But it was the Russians who kind of twigged that the brain was a tuning fork. The Russians said that the brain was very much like a tuning fork, and you had to tune it correctly.
Yeah.
If you didn't, you'd get DNA malfunction and all sorts. So their system, their technique was based on tuning the brain, where the Americans was based on a subconscious technique. Absolutely fascinating. If you have a look at the work of Joseph McMonigal on YouTube, and he did a lot of work with the Monroe Institute on out-of-body experiences, and it's just absolutely amazing what happened to him. And I've forgotten the guy, Alexei Slavin. He was the head of the KGB remote viewing unit, and a lot of these men had spiritual awakenings through it. So something's definitely going on, and the technique works. The CRV technique of using an ideogram and extracting data on a template works marvelously, because they wanted something that anybody could do. Pity I'm not you. It's a pity. I must come to the studio.
Yes.
And we'll do a remote viewing session with you all.
That would
live
be great.
on air.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'll arrange that with you, because we did it with BBC Lancashire, and he was absolutely cock-a-hoot with it. He did it on the radio, and he was absolutely cock-a-hoot with it. So we'll do that.
Yeah,
would that be good? I'll get that. We'll get that sorted.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Sherlock said that Uri Geller used to do some remote work with the US government.
Yeah, yes, he did. I don't know much about Uri Geller. I think he did a bit more with the Israelis as well. I'm not too sure where Uri Geller. I'd have to look at my research again, because I've forgotten whereabouts he fits in. But he was involved in one of the projects. But the real serious players are Lynn Buchanan, Ed Dames, and Matt Monagle, and of course Ingo Swann. A guy called Ingo Swann who recently passed over, and he was very involved in remote viewing. And there was a retired police sergeant called Pat Price, who was absolutely superb at it. He was that good. The rumour is that the Russians got him because he was that good. It was at the height of the Cold War, and it really was hair-raising what was happening in terms of psychic warfare and all this kind of thing. Except America was actually researching it even before then, in 1950. They were actually looking at all this in 1950, so it was all very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and Reiki Deb said it sounds like the Buddhist idea of oneness.
It sounds like the what? Sorry.
The Buddhist idea of oneness.
What does? Sorry. What sounds like what? The new cosmology?
Yeah, when you're saying about tuning the mind and that.
Yes, it is. Yeah. They're definitely. It's outstanding work, and the disappointing thing about it is that it's just sat there on this internet site, and no publisher there published some of the work, what they discovered, because the quality. I mean, for example, you could have a channeler in your room now, and it's channeling from the planet Zargon and telling you all kinds of things, but it doesn't cross-correlate with anybody else in the room who also has the ability to channel. It's never the same.
Yeah.
Whereas these Russian guys in this special unit, they had all kinds of protocols and kind of control to make sure that the data was absolutely pure. Where that data went, I've no idea. By the way, I have no idea where that went. But you safe to say that the India, which I'm a bit of a specialist on India and their remote viewing and UFOs and things, and they've been using it quite a lot. They recently discovered using remote viewers, so it is said, corruption in their Navy department and all that kind of thing. So a lot of countries use it, including China.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were saying that Inception seems to be quite close. Didn't you see that film recently, Neil? And you said it was pretty close to what you know of the paranormal
Yeah,
world.
it was quite, yeah. It was a good film, actually. I don't know if anybody's seen it on the chat.
Yeah,
but it's very close.
It's a bit close, is that, to probably what goes on in a rough kind of sense when dealing with all the paranormal, the paranormal shenanigans that happen to people like me, for example, who get in these insane situations and no idea why, frankly. And that's why I studied remote viewing, because I'd got into this. I hasten to add, I'm genned up on it. I know it inside out. I'm not all that good at it. I've got to say, I'm not. It'll take me months to get it perfected, but I know my ins and outs on it, and I needed to know because I wanted to know answers to what was happening to me.
Yeah.
So I looked at it to see if there was anything in it, and sure enough, there was. That the mind is a doorway and it's a processor of information, and all that kind of thing,
So that obviously people are training to do this. So where are they getting the training from?
Well, one of the best courses I would recommend is Ed Dames's course called Learn Remote Viewing. And there's the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild, which is a very good one. And then there's Ed's courses cost some money, but I think you'll find that for free, if you want a free course, if you go to Scientific Remote Viewing, Courtney Brown, on his website, he's got the whole course for free, and it's basically an enhancement of the CRV course, but things are there's very subtle tweaks to it. It's very different as to how it all works. For example, you draw an ideogram rapidly with the CRV technique, but with the SRV technique, you don't draw the ideogram. You pause after you've drawn the ideogram. So there's different little tweaks and so on. But I would recommend, if you wanted a real good little course, I would recommend Edna Dames's CRV course, and you can get them on eBay. If you have a look on eBay, as cheap as chips, the actual course, pretty cheap for about 20 quid.
Yeah.
Compared to the 349, I think, the charge for it.
So, we've got one here, Chemtrails, is a name for you, says, Ingo Swan was one of the best and most famous remote viewers, died recently. Is that the one you mentioned?
Yeah,
recently?
that's the one. Yes,
so I think he's just come on, Chemtrail.
Yeah,
he's not been on long. So don't forget, guys, if you've got any questions for Tony, please type them out.
Fire away.
I'm sure he'll answer. Now, for those, we've got quite a lot of new viewers since we've last spoke to you, Tony.
Right.
For those of them that don't really know you, how would you explain yourself?
Well, gracious, I'm a man who basically, in a nutshell, I'm a man who started having UFOs come over my house from about 1992 onwards. I've had paranormal experiences all my childhood, but from about 92, I started having strange UFOs coming in over my house, and then in 1999, over a period of 4 months, I had a UFO coming in, and I filmed it, and I got harassed because of it, and I had bizarre people following me, I had phone calls, I had all kinds of things happen, and it's took me nearly, that was in, let's say, 1999, so it's 2013 now, isn't it? So it's took me a number of years to work out what's been going on. It's taken me a hell of a lot of sussing out and years of research to find out why I was picked, because I'm nothing special. I'm not an ambassador to aliens. Anybody who comes out with that, they've got to think again, because real life, it doesn't happen like that. Aliens don't choose ambassadors. These people in the UFOs, these off-world intelligences, they like to speak to scientists. They like to speak to individuals who are up in our society. But every so often, they'll pick something that they like a challenge with, and that individual was me. And that doesn't make me special. It somehow makes me cursed. So we had strange harassment going on from individuals who were following me in pubs and coming out with remarks that only I would know. And what the baffling question is not that it didn't happen to me, that a lot of more astute people would say, how did they know before you that this was going on? And that is the ultimate question. They seemed to know that these UFOs were coming in, and I didn't. And when you've got somebody in a pub, you walk past them and they come out with a remark that is only relevant to what has been happening to you, your brain kind of like thinks, that's odd. And that happened in London recently. Another odd incident. It's all odd. It's just all odd, and you think, oh, are you going paranoid, or is this actually happening to you? We're dominated by the esoteric. In our society, it's carefully hidden. But the question is as to what direction that esoteric is going down, as to what direction it's leading us to, and what exactly is it, is the question. And I think some of us have discovered that it isn't very nice. You only have to look at what's happened recently with the BBC and the Savile case to put a pointer in the direction of what's going on. And I think that's all I would need to say on the matter, because it can get, saying too much. It's not safe to say too much about it. But that's the basic gist of it.
Right, okay. Well, those of you who just joined us, we've got Tony Topping with us, and we're talking to him about remote viewing and stuff, as well as himself, because I know there's new viewers on there tonight. And have been since last time we had Tony on. We've got a couple of questions from Chris L. He said, "Where are these beings from, and what do they look like? Do you know anything about that?"
Oddly enough, there was a unit in World War II before it became the KGB called SMERSH, and it's not the same unit you would think of as in the James Bond movie. It means deaf to spies, and SMERSH went after the Germans. They went after anybody who was spying on them. But the strange story occurs where somebody sent me an email saying their Uncle Bob in a village in Spain, he says, "Oh, I'm having a clear out. I used to work in the Russian diplomatic service, and they discovered this handbook called the Extraterrestrial Handbook, or the ET Handbook, or something like that. Dated from 1940. It was standard issue to SMERSH officers. So the rumour says, and in that is drawings of what these extraterrestrials look like, and addresses and photos of children who possibly had interaction with them. And so therefore, you will never ever get over the shock of what they look like. Some have pointed faces, some are astoundingly beautiful, but the basic gist of it is it's two legs, two arms. But what they look like is, in some cases, just completely out of this world. Just unbelievable. It deeply shocked me. And where do they come from? Well, that's another question, really, because I think you'll find that they come from all over the place. Interestingly enough, India, who's very open on this subject, very, very open in its media on UFOs, would suggest, there's been suggestions made in the Indian media, that certain star systems and planets are kind of like a planet is actually a regional government. And the star system is like a country. Do you get the scale of that? So whereas we're on planet Earth and we're a country, they're saying that the planet is a regional government, a regional sector. How they've worked that out, I've no idea. But they're saying that there's aliens in that environment. Anything to do with Andromeda and the opposite and the other galaxy is removed. Anything to do with aliens in that area and Andromeda, all that kind of thing, is not there, not present in India's media. It's been removed, and that's where some of them are coming from. They're coming from the Andromeda sector, the Andromeda region, and their technology is very different to ours, and they have problems with their technology like we would have, but at a different level altogether. This is from my own experiences. Right. As I say, it doesn't make me special, doesn't make me an ambassador. I don't know whether the knowledge is correct. They could be telling me anything. Okay. But if I'm just being plain speaking on what I know. You get my drift.
Yeah. Neil says, sorry, not Neil, Nigel Charlotte says, "My first UFO encounter, I was visited within a week of it happening by a top police chief who knew all about it when he first saw one." And Dave Lloyd is in the chat room. Welcome back, David. He said, "Is Tony aware of Project Pegasus and
yes.
Andrew Basiagos?"
Yes,
he says the US government have had teleportation capabilities since the early 70s.
No, they haven't.
They haven't.
No, they haven't. That is a different realm altogether. That is not really written about. But the clue to it all is to do with inception and non-locality, and to do with the inception of time travelers within the environment. Anybody who starts talking about that is on the right track. But no, a nice guy, Andrew. I've had an email with him, but no, I don't believe that the. What is freaking me out, a freaky concept that I came across with time travel, is the Sumerians, who were a very advanced civilization, is the past visiting the future. And are some people from the future on Facebook updating as if in real time in our present, which I think are some really freaky concepts to get your head around when it comes to time travel. But no, I don't believe that the Mars time travel story is just I don't know. It just gives people no hope, really, doesn't it? I mean, it just... there's a photo of him sat there with Abraham Lincoln or something. He's an Abraham Lincoln photo. He's near Abraham Lincoln on a battlefield at Gettysburg, and they had a time jump thing, and real life and what really goes on bears no resemblance. No resemblance at all to that.
Right, okay. So I hope that answers your question, Dave. Andy707 says, do you think people will start monitoring this show?
Well, I mean, you know, all the time this phone call's monitored, and this, you know, you'll be monitored. But really, what they've got electronic computer systems that just flag up anything that's important. But the thing is, it's where it's all heading to is the question. It's just where it's all leading us to, and I don't think it's leading us down a good path. I mean, sure. I mean, we haven't said anything wrong this evening.
No.
We're not causing any harm to anyone. But I'm sure this show will be monitored.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I've always had a feeling, to be honest with you, when it comes to UFOs and stuff like that we're learning all the time, and I feel as though we're just hitting the boundaries of it, and the more we pass them boundaries, the more that they start thinking, hey, they're learning too much, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's the esoteric engine behind everything, and it's a very ancient one that is actually causing this. And some of the governments out there actually, well, the governments is a wrong word, but some of the more, I think, classified agencies who've studied all this, America in the 1950s, they twigged on this. They actually twigged that this is what was roughly going on. That some kind of, and obviously Sharlick's research, Nigel, his research is to do with portals and the opening of portals in his book.
That's right.
And you know, his work has a bearing on things because the American government in 1950 actually twigged that there was something going on between esoteric symbolism and the ceremonies that we see today, and the triggering of these portals for unknown intelligences to wander into us, to wander into our environment. And now, if they twigged that in 1950, I wonder what they've twigged today. Is the big question, isn't it? Well, what have they sussed out today that's now happening around us? You know.
Right, so, but you cover quite a load of stuff on your website, don't you?
I do.
You've really gone into this.
Yeah.
And it's not just remote viewing.
No.
You know, there's loads of stuff. You've really gone to town on this. And I know you say that you wanted to find out why, but there's a lot.
There's a lot of it. The reason why is because it's designed in such a way that I have a high rate of return visitors.
Yeah.
What happens is that people go back to it, they look at this, they look at that, and I've noticed I have a very high rate of return. It's designed in such a way to keep people looking at it all the time and just excite them in such a way. There's RS-33 on there, the Collins Elite. You know, which was like a top secret agency, which is very interesting. That's to do with remote viewing, and it's a secret agency that was formed probably around the time of Majestic 12, and that's due to the excellent research of Nick Redfern, whose excellent research pulled that one out, and it made sense. And there's also the bit to do with Britain in Antarctica battling against the Nazis before the Americans knew about it, under something called Operation Tabalan. I've yet to put that on my website. So there's loads of stuff to get there for your listeners to get the teeth into and look at. There is.
Yeah, Nigel says we have to be brave like yourself and push on through. The powers that be will try to stop us. And Chris L came back and said, do you think aliens will make everyone aware of these presents anytime soon?
That's what's going on. That's certainly, there's some sort of awakening going on within people, and I'm beginning to think now that presidents and prime ministers actually are aware. They're aware. I think they're aware of this conspiracy that is going on, which starts with international banking, bankrupting nations. The strategy is happening in Britain now, and it's a national security issue, whereby you have a banking system that appears to be subtly moving and escalating to bankrupt the country, so that for some reason we can get a big loan and bankrupt ourselves even more. And it's absolutely insane. And more people are waking up to it. The people of Iceland certainly did. But you know, we've only got. I think sometimes the British people are just asleep. and those of us who have an opinion, recently on the BBC programme I did, which I did regarding 7/7, and I was calling for an official inquiry. That's what I was calling for, and there was this massive bust-up, and I was totally misrepresented. I was made to look like some kind of idiot. This is in the public domain, so I can discuss this.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute tragedy, actually, what happened. I thought it was a tragedy that the BBC could professionally misrepresent people in such a way. It's discrimination. Anything that is alternative or all that kind of thing with the mainstream media appears to be frowned upon. But yet some of these people in the media pray to a supreme being called God, which is paranormal. How do they work that one out?
Well, this is it.
But then you guys and girls in the room there, if you put on mainstream media your viewpoints, you'd be ridiculed. And I just find it odd.
Yeah. We've got some more questions for you. Dave Lloyd came back again and said, does Tony think we are actually living in a quantum hologram?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, straight to the point.
Can you go a bit further for that one?
Oddly enough, that we've been investigating for City Talk 105, we've been investigating India and all their research that they were doing, because we were convinced that some kind of think tank, UFO think tank in India, had just been casually leaking stuff to its media. And one of the things which absolutely fascinated me, and I don't know whether it's correct, but basically one of the things they kind of like worked out, whoever these people were, and they must have sat down and really worked it out, was the life after death process as being an actual return to the projection, a return to the higher intelligence that's causing this holographic projection. That in fact we're actually part of it. We're actually part of this higher intelligence. And that's probably why human beings have such a fuss and flap around them with these UFOs around them, and that's why UFOs are so interested in them, because there's a possibility that we're linked to something that is a higher kind of intelligence, and that they kept banning this term around Type 7 technology, Type 4 technology, but Type 7, a Type 7 intelligence. And when they were kind of like trying to suss out when the soul leaves the body and goes down the tunnel of light, there's this process of recalling your life, so they say, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the precise details, but they were working out the physics and the quantum kind of dynamics of that process, which they said was complex, highly complex. So this is the kind of thing that kind of nations are looking at, but keeping quiet about. And so I do think, yes, we are a projection, and that was recently in the mainstream media, wasn't it, about us being a holographic projection.
Right. Let's see if we've got anything else. Because my chat room flashes up a bit too far. What have you got there?
Yeah, Tony, can you tell us a bit more about these Arctic Nazis? Because Andy 707 seems to think it was a total myth.
Seems to think it was what, sorry, mate?
A total myth.
No, not it's a civil servant actually who did this research, and what happened was he took the testimony of some Special Air Service officers, and he interviewed them 4 years later, and the story hadn't changed about the fact that they'd gone on a special mission. Well, it was actually one of the veterans. I don't know how many of them are still alive, but he was in the special boat squadron or something like that, and they were tasked with going to the Falklands. So they were told, when in fact they were tasked with going to Antarctica to discover why people on a British base had been mysteriously killed. And when they got there, they discovered that there were all kinds of strange goings-on, and some references to polar men. These people had made a radio transmission and made references to polar men. And so they formed something called Operation Tabalan, which was Britain's secret operations in Antarctica. And they discovered that some of the Nazis were still there, but they didn't tell the Americans any of this. Now, what's interesting is that the guy who was interviewed, he was interviewed about 4 years later, and his story didn't change. It would have been interesting, though, in fairness to the point made, if they could get another witness if they could get another witness who witnessed it. They only interviewed one individual over the space of 4 years who didn't change his story about it.
Right.
And it was called Operation Tabalan.
Tabalan.
Yeah, it's on the internet. Operation Tabalan, it was called.
Right, he said, Dave Lloyd said, ask Tony if he knows about the island of South Fuel and Sentinel Oil.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm aware. I'm fully aware of that one as well. Yes, yes, that's the Falklands, isn't it? And the latest research by David Griffin and Alec Newald, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think that's the right one. And it's to do with, I think David Griffin has uncovered something to do with Marconi and the mysterious deaths there. And what they've done, they discovered some oil, some nano oil of some description that was not Earth-based, not of human design. They took it back to Marconi and ended up coming croppers with it because they weren't sure what they were dealing with. And this, as I understand, has come from Alec Newald and his work Coevolution. I may have got that hopelessly wrong. I may be barking up the road. I think that's the right one.
Right. Okay. Right. Another one from Andy. Which one? Right. Okay. Andy 707. None of my research suggests that there was no more than a small party which went north to look for fuel. If I'm pronouncing that right. Fuel.
Yeah, fair enough. That's his research. My research indicates differently.
Right.
What I would say is that this was an MOD civil servant who did this interview.
Right.
And there was something far bigger going on with Britain and Antarctica, and the fact that the U-boat fleet disappeared into Antarctica at the end of World War II. Elements of the U-boat fleet disappeared. In fact, if you wanna get really genned up about it, it's the Russians who know what's going on in Antarctica. If you look at some of the Russian guys who researched this, and they believe in some I don't know whether this is correct, but they believe that Antarctica is a wormhole. It's like a wormhole point of entry in some cases. But they said that from the Russian point of view, that the Nazis had disappeared with a U-boat fleet. The Americans went after them. But meanwhile, the British had gone there and not told the Americans what was going on. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I'm hearing this. You see, I'm hearing this third party, but I just think that there's credence in the fact that the guy didn't change his story after 4 years. Still the same story, and it's on Nexus magazine. I think if you look up Nexus magazine, you'll find the whole documents are on there.
Now you also deal with a lot of conspiracy theories, don't you? Which seem to lead in everything. If you think about it, everything you talk about, as with the paranormal, it always leads back to it, doesn't it? Really?
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, with it does, and I tend to seem to get involved in conspiracy theory, and it's not my kind of thing, really. It's not what I do, but it seems to me that the media seem to gravitate me towards that. I mean, I was portrayed in the media as a conspiracy zealot, a madcap, crazy conspiracy theorist. I'm not. That's actually not me. I don't know where they got that labelling from, but they seem to actually label me as that, and that's what I aren't. But there again, when you've got the esoteric engine driving the media, anything can be said. You can be made to look stupid, can't you? I don't know whether I don't know in what context you mean the paranormal and conspiracy theory, and it all relates to conspiracy. Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Well, with the paranormal, when we're talking about, sometimes we're talking about UFOs, and we'll be talking about ghosts and stuff. It all seems to. In cryptozoology, 9 times out of 10, it always comes back to the unknown, and like sometimes people might say, well, with UFOs, if we were talking about UFOs, it can cross with ghosts, because they say that sometimes it does coincide with a ghost apparition scene or something, things like that.
Yeah.
So and it's the same with yourself. Everything you seem to cover.
Yeah.
Most of it seems to come back to that title, conspiracies.
Yeah,
in the actual world.
I would suggest there's been a conspiracy regarding me in terms of what's been happening and what's been going on. Somebody somewhere does know precisely what's been going on with me. I'm the last one to know. So there has been a conspiracy there, and that the technology they used on me in terms of mind control was just horrendous, absolutely bloody horrendous, and still is. And it's not for your listeners' ears, because it's just brutal, absolutely brutal, because somebody somewhere does not like human beings to be awake and aware of what is going on around them. They can try and stop it as much as they can, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are going to get more and more awake, and we're going to see big changes in our governments. Big changes here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. We were doing a thing about UFOs recently, about these ships that, people are seeing and sightings, and we were saying them what they could and couldn't be. There was some, some theories like maybe they're just scoutish, like radio-controlled machines just picking up all the data, you know what I mean? Well, instead of sending a load of aliens sort of like light years away just to check on things. Because I've always thought, well, there's a lot of people seeing these UFOs, and and the government are going, oh no, but we must be seeing something. Are they just drones, or are they? What do you think these spaceships are?
Well, interestingly enough, back to India again, there was an observation with these mysterious leaks that were getting into the Indian media that you wouldn't see in our press about UFOs, and they were giving an opinion on the Vietnam UFO crash, and their assessment of it was that the thing was you see, what is interesting with this UFO stuff is that the technology base hasn't altered. So from about the time of Alexander the Great, they're all flying discs. They're all silver discs. They're all balls of light. They're all this. But what the Indian kind of Indian thing has observed with all this is that there has been a change in the technology. There's been a change from the craft becoming more biologically intelligent. They've become bio UFOs instead of kind of normal UFOs, and they've changed from discs to triangles. Now they've observed this, which is very interesting. They've been watching. They've observed what's going on. And they've indicated that these kind of things, some of these things, as you said, are probes. So they come in and they're actually, the Vietnam one, they reckon, that crashed was actually a probe. And what they do is they replicate, and it causes a technology, this is mind-blowing, but seemingly they replicate and they can cause technological problems because they're just doing their own thing. They've ended up going AWOL. It's like our drones on speed doing their own thing. A drone, can you imagine one of these drones just suddenly adapting its own awareness and doing what it likes? Yeah. And seemingly, if these safeguards are overridden, that's what's going to happen. And they seemingly, as fuel, they can kind of like I don't know, as energy, they can kind of like process carbon, nuclear, anything they want to try and sustain their artificial intelligence as they're probing other planets. So in answer to your question, I find it fascinating that they've sussed it out. And yes, you're right, there are probes that are coming. They're not just alien craft. No. There again, some of these UFOs that are coming in and people and having, and speaking to people are in bases from the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific area. Of that, I think there's no doubt that they're in ocean bases. They're not just for the planets, and they'll just come in. They will just casually come in and speak to a member of the public and casually fly off again. Yeah. And it's as casual as that. In Peru, for example, that's what happens in Peru, where they just speak to the local villagers. And in India, in a couple of villages in India, that's happening, where they just casually, these so-called people in the UFOs will just be casually speaking to them. Yeah. And I find it fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah. It does seem a lot happens in America, though.
Yes. A lot does happen in America, but a lot is being kept quiet in America. And it seems that if you observe non-Western press sources, you kind of like can twig on what's going on. You get a very accurate picture of what's happening with the UFO situation by paying no attention to our media outlets and paying attention to foreign media outlets. For example, I'll go back to India again. It's a current theme of mine, but for example, there's a garage in Ladakh, equivalent of half a Daily Motors, and I found this, it was in the Indian press, that they'd got this TV set that's black and white, and the army had sealed off an area due to UFO activity. And they claimed, these people from this garage claimed that this black and white TV went coloured one day, and this woman, who looked distinctly alien with almond eyes, spoke in Urdu and said, everything's all right, we're just here, carry on, go about your business, cha-ra. And it's comical. It's absolutely hilarious that it's just so... You wouldn't get that in our... Good God, if that happened in Britain, where they parked in the local car park, the area would be sealed off, wouldn't it? You'd have all the military there. It'd be unbelievable, wouldn't it?
This is it. Dave's come back again. He said, does Tony have any knowledge of the Aradia couple who live off radiation and say radiation has a consciousness, according to Stuart Swerdlow, something like that.
Stuart. There's a lot of them that seem to just occupy my time and say a lot but don't say anything.
Right.
And you know, you can listen to some of these people for nearly 2 hours and they're not really. I can't find answers to my questions from them. So I tend to avoid. But yes, it's quite correct though. They are a radiation couple, aren't they? I've not looked at it in depth though. I haven't looked at it in depth.
He goes on to ask, have you actually heard voices in your head via intracranial manipulation?
Have I heard voices in my head via intracranial manipulation? Synthetic telepathy, I would suggest. See, when, for example, I think it's in the 3 gigahertz range, but if they point a carrier wave at you in that signal range and modulate it, you're going to start hearing voices in your head, definitely so, and that's happened on numerous occasions, and it's got very, very nasty. Because it's covert, you see. They don't want people knowing that they're under mind control. They don't want people to, you know. I mean, they just don't want people knowing that is going on. But what is sinister about it is the gang stalking element of it. The concept that a lot of these mind controls are coming out with, where the goons that are doing it also follow the people concerned as well, which is known as gang stalking, and that has happened to me, where they've come out with something that they said in front of me in a ruddy pub, and your mind can't quite comprehend. That happened years back, but your mind can't quite comprehend the situation that's happening before you.
Right.
I got something for you, Tony. There's a big conversation going on in the chat room, and I'm wondering whether you know anything about it. It's about the Americans working with the Nazis after the war in Germany, and carrying on the experiments.
Yeah, under Operation Paperclip. Is that what we're talking about? Or?
They haven't actually said Operation Paperclip, but Sherlock says that his mum remembers a lot of it and has told him stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Americans and the Americans did take the Nazi technology base and tried to do well. I mean, they developed the rocket program. They developed a lot of the guns and machine gunnery that the U.S. military used are based on Nazi designs. You know, which is very, and oddly enough, some of America's top secret aircraft, the TR-3B, so I'm told, is based on a Nazi Mercury lift design that was based on a Vyama design from ancient India. Just fascinating, isn't it? When you
but they're alluding to the fact that it's not just the tech, but some of the human experiments as well.
Yeah. I can well imagine, although I don't know anything about that. But no. On saying that, no. Of course, MK Ultra and all the stuff that went on when Richard Helms burnt the files because he didn't want Congress to know what they've been doing. So I can well imagine that is what's gone on.
Right. Chris L says, I think the whole issue of what they're hiding about UFOs can only last a bit longer, as most people know something or have some knowledge about it. Then our Shabba came on and said, Tony, sir, was united recently. Can you advise me your views on the Egyptian king Akhenaten or something, and the reasons behind him moving away from the Egyptians' way of life? Do you think with his unique look he was an alien humanoid?
Yes, I think there is a genetic stream that dates back from ancient Egypt and beyond that to extraterrestrials. I certainly do, and I think that yes, I do. Now it's something. Oh, God, it's a question I can't. He's the guy. When we say Amen at the end of a prayer, that's who it refers to, or is it Amenhotep the Pharaoh? Does anybody know? Amen.
Not sure.
It's related to Egypt. It's related to one of the pharaohs. You're actually saying Amen after the name of the Egyptian pharaoh.
Right.
But no, I don't. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid.
Right. Well, Dave says, got to admit, Tony gives some good answers tonight on the spot.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank
so you know. Well, Tony, again, it's been great talking to you. We've covered a few things apart from remote viewing.
We have, haven't we? Go
You
on.
know, and as usual, you're such a very interesting man to talk to.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and and you know, we do love having you on the show. And yes, we would like you in the hub sometime, and
Right.
we can
Well,
do
we'll
that
do
remote viewing.
We can do a remote viewing thing, can't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And that will be absolutely excellent.
Because I think
We'll get
when you
that
were
on
going to come into in December, you got rolled into this Channel 4 thing, or what was it, or something?
Yeah, that's it. It's just at the moment it's just rejection after rejection.
Yeah.
It's just continual. It's a continual slog to try and get somewhere. But yes, that's still on the burner.
Yeah.
Lord only knows where this is all going, but it's leading somewhere for me, I hope.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, don't let them get you down. I see sometimes when you get a bit despaired on your Facebook.
I do. I
So-
actually despair with it all sometimes.
Yeah, well, try not to let it get you down, my
Well, thank
sweetheart.
you, dear.
All right. Now, you've got a website, haven't you? TonyTopping.com.
Yes, and I'm on Facebook.
Okay. And is it just a Facebook normal page that you've got with your name, or is it?
It is. No,
Yeah?
it's normal. It's a normal Facebook page.
Okay,
with
then,
my
my
name
darling.
on it. I think it's Tony. You'll find me on Facebook
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay. They'll find you if they look. Well, I've put your website on there. Don't forget, anything coming up, let us know, and we'll be happy to advertise it for you.
All right, lovely, and I'll
All right,
come back
and-
to you with a date for popping over and doing this.
Yeah. And you take care.
Will do.
All
Thank
right.
you. Cheers, gang.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, cheers, Tony.
Well, that was Tony Topping, and our next guest has finally found us on